What sort of education is William Blake talking about? He's talking about concrete way of education. Your 4-mark questions will be a direct question wherein your answers should follow the introduction, synopsis and conclusion. New life, happiness, and your eyes completely filled with dreams. And here we extend a hand to hold so that we make sure that you reach your ideal success. Hello everyone, I'm Soni Puamma representing with Dhyashram in all the videos if you have watched, and again today representing one with Q&A session. Prior to all these, you should have watched all my videos as a protocol before you sit on to the Q&A session. Accordingly, you have to have the textbooks along. Either of those, if not, you have to have the videos watched. If you couldn't go out of your house because of the ill reasons, of course, I wish that you would have watched the video so that it becomes easy for you to answer. So let's start with one. Here's William Blake. You're not new to him, if you have watched him. I told you either of those, either the text or the videos are must while you sit on to the question and answer session. So what is that we do before we go to gym? We have our workouts done, and before that there is a warm-up, and that warm-up is termed as to be a proverb or an idiom. So English is a very expressive subject. Proverbs and idioms just acts as a cherry on top. Whatever it appears to be, it has a very deeper meaning. So let's warm up our mind with the assertion of William Blake. What is the proverb that he sends as a message? He whose face, when I talk about he, it's not the gender that he is talking about. He is irrespective of gender. He means human beings. It can be either man or woman. He whose face means countenance, gives no light, shall never become a star. So how perplexing it is. That's the importance of proverb. We have to delve deeper to the meaning. When he says face, it means that our personality. When our personality cannot motivate, we cannot be a motivator. When we can't inspire others, we can't be an example of inspiration. So, before we judge others, we have to make sure that how optimistic we are. So, once the time, we cannot lead others, we can never be the leader. That's what the proverb has to mention. Next, comprehending self. What is that you have? You have the textbook here. This is the apt textbook confined to your studies of 1st PUC English. So the title, it is as Reflections. Obscure though, you have to have the title mentioned as Reflections. So have it alongside, go to the nearby bookstall, ask for one, and whenever you sit in the classes of the video classes, maybe the question and answer session for the reference, it's a must. So I repeat, your textbook is entitled as Reflections. See here, Reflections, English textbook, 1st PUC. I believe you are not in kindergarten wherein I have to repeat you each of those. Be wise enough in choosing your textbook also. So that's what it is termed as Reflections. So let's start comprehending our question and answers. I'll start with 1-mark questions. So every time before we start anything, there is a protocol or an etiquette of writing. You will have a pondering question. Do we have to write 1-mark answers in a word or a sentence? So my question to you is, what harm in completing the answer in a sentence? There is no harm. You will have 3 hours of time. Most of you will wrap up in 2.5 hours. The other hour is to glance over and wasting time. So it's better, right? You have to complete the sentence and that should be an answer, and underline the answer precisely. So here you will understand. First question, who do you think I refers in the poem? So where is I? The very first line. Just check in your textbook. The very first line, the first word of the poem terms as I. It starts, your poem embarks with the word I. I refers to in the poem. Which poem are we talking about? The Schoolboy. Who is the poet? William Blake. So I refers to William Blake or the Schoolboy. Confused? When I talk about William Blake. So who is the poet? So poet is actually pouring himself down into the shoes of a schoolboy, and he is narrating his plight as a schoolboy. So here you can either write William Blake or the schoolboy. So you can make it very precise. Either of those is a correct answer. Next question. Sweet company. You will have it in the first stanza. You will have sweet company referring to skylark, huntsman's horn, and bird's song. So how do you have to complete the sentence? You have to complete the sentence as such. Sweet company refers to skylark, huntsman's horn, and bird's song. So if you can wind up with either of these also are fine. Next. What drives in the sense not car driving, what drives in the sense take away. What drives the boy's joy away? So I need not to answer because it's where you also dwell. You are reluctant to come to college, you are reluctant to go to schools, aren't you? If you nod no or yes also, it's much palpable. So school is something wherein we are apprehensive to visit sometimes, but not every time, because this pandemic or this situation would have taught us how important it is to be educated, how important it is to go to schools, isn't it? Isolation always actually torments you. Next, what drives the boy's joy away? Who is the boy here? Boy refers to the schoolboy, that's William Blake mentioning about. The very thought of going to school drives the boy's joy away. So this is very direct. You have it in the paragraph, you have it in the stanza. So what is that drives his joy away? The very thought of going to school. So this is not new to you to answer. Next, how do the little ones refers to schoolboys just like you, spend the day in the school? How do they spend the day in the school? The little ones spend the day in the school by sighing. You have this panting sort of, this is what it is, sighing. You know, the way of desperacy is sighing. That's needless to answer. And dismay in the sense helplessness. So, what all the things that's mentioning here? When it says spend the day in the school, how do they spend their day? They aren't joyful, they aren't entertained at all. They are under strict surveillance of a teacher. So what will be their caricature? What will be their production? Their production of mannerism is sighing and dismay. Their behavior portrays that they are reluctant to sit in the school. They have to be educated. But what sort of education is William Blake talking about? He's talking about concrete way of education, where children are smothered without creativity. Every child's first mother or first teacher is the nature. The time we start stepping, the time we start walking, nature supports us, and nature becomes your first teacher. The way we learn in the nature, we are reluctant to learn amidst the schools or amidst the four concrete education with no creativity, with no freedom, with no independence, nothing. You are under a strict teacher. So that's what he is talking about. So needless, you don't have to answer everything in such a way. You can have it in a word or a sentence, and you can either write this or this. Written with two is good enough. Next, what does cage stand for in the poem? Cage is a symbol. Symbol of what? Cage is a symbol of captivity. Cage is a symbol of slavery. And here it says that cage stands for school, wherein you are entrapped, where there is no freedom. You cannot go out. We all are the jailers and you are jailed. You'd all see us just like Hitler, isn't it? I am a Hitler, the other teachers are Hitler is what you are thinking about. So here that's the same where William Blake puts up in a very good manner stating that, dear teachers, you all are Hitler and this is what we feel about you. So it's put up in a very lucid manner. The irony is that a child is mothered in the concrete way of education, and school refers to cage or cage refers to school. The either of those is fine. The other way around also sends the same. So cage refers to school, where the children are entrapped. Everybody are put behind bars. What is the characteristic of jail? wherein you're tortured, wherein there is no freedom of speech, freedom of expression, there is nothing. So you feel very smothered, and that's the pathetic condition of any prisoner. So a child is no less than a prisoner in the four-way of education. Other than this, I would want you to go back to the textual or the context question and answers. So that will be your home assignment. Clear? So let's gallop on to the 4 marks question. Your 4-mark questions will be a direct question wherein your answers should follow the introduction, synopsis and conclusion. If I have to talk about conclusion, you have to conclude with a message. Your conclusion should conclude with a message. For example, what does the schoolboy love to do on a summer morn? So till here, understand the question. Till here, what all the points? He wakes up in the summer morn. He sees out of his window, the nature is very serene, and the serenity of nature gives him a first thought of happiness. And all of a sudden, his imagination drifts to his school, wherein he is apprehensive, wherein he is reluctant to go to school. So everything is smothered there. What drives his joy away? The thought of the school drives his joy away. So how is that you have to elaborate? You have to elaborate what is the message that William Blake throws on to the reader, to a parent, to a teacher. So you can critically analyze. You can put it up in a notion of yours through words of poet. So what is the second question? Describe the boy's experience in the school. Ma'am, it all sounds equal, but the questions might differ from each other. If they give you this, it's better that you write whole of the synopsis wisely. And when they ask you this, describe the boy's experience in the school. For him, it's no less than a cage. You have to give the symbol of cage. In the word cage, you can elaborate the answer. With the cage term, you can elaborate your answer. He is sitting under the cruel sigh. He is sitting under the cruel surveillance of his teacher. He is completely in dismay. He is sighing, wherein he is helpless, and he compares his early morn with that of the nature. He distinguishes the education that a nature throws on a child and the formal way of schooling. Next, according to the poet, this is according to the poet, but I say whenever you read a poem, you are the reader. So you have to put your foot into the shoes of the author or the poet and then critically analyze. How does formal education, here you have it for the first time, formal education, that's only texts, texts and texts, curb a learner's potential. Curb in the sense barriers. Curb which actually snubs a learner's potential. While we don't have creativity, while your creativity doesn't flow out of your mind, there is no equalizing formal education. There is no use that you are educated much. Bookworms anybody can be. You learn something by rote, anybody can do. But the time you exist with the, or when you start grabbing the essence of a paragraph, also anything such, that's what makes a true learner. We have to learn every day. Every day is a learning day. Our life process with that of learning. So until you die, a man is a learner. And here, only formal education doesn't help you acquire knowledge. You have to move out of the comfort zone. Think out of the box is what we say, no, thinking out of the box. You can't say you sit in a box and say, hooray, I'm here. It's not that. So you should always think out of the box, something very creative, which others failed to create it. And you have to be the pioneer of one. We say Eureka. You have to be that. You have to come with the word Eureka while you invent something new. Alright, so that's where the learning process starts, that's where the learning process ends. But I say every learning has an ellipsis, dot, dot, dot and dot. That's known as ellipsis, which states that learning is a long process. The last question, of course, the fourth one, formal schooling not only takes away the joy. Why am I reading these questions? So that with the colloquial, you'll understand it better. Read in the perspective of mind. Schooling, formal schooling plays a very pivotal role. What sort of schooling are we talking about? We are talking about formal schooling. It not only takes away the joy, this is very important, isn't it? Next, of childhood. See, everything is interlinked. Formal schooling is interlinked with that of the joy. When there is no joy, your childhood goes in vain. There is no childhood while you are smothered as a tender bud, but also hinders the child's growth forever explained. This can be a critical analysis. This you can opine personally. The best example given to you. When a child starts walking, it takes the help of its parents, a mother or a father or whoever helps it out to take its first step. But if we don't leave the hand, if it doesn't walk with confidence, can the baby grow into an infant? It will just be a toddler, isn't it? So, the first step is very important. The same way to a schoolboy also. Out of the formal education, there should be something known as creative way of thinking. And creativity is more than that of a concrete way of education. So, you can give any instances possible. To understand this, you should have watched my video. And all the videos will support you to thematically represent the poem. And here, symbol of cage is a representation of prison. So, they might ask you that for sure. And next, here is your pattern of question paper. Your question paper would seem like this. And every of the chapters will be chronologically placed. For example, the schoolboy is your second poem in the sense that in your text it is the poem which turns out to be second. Where does this come? See, it's in the second one. Mention one of the sweet companies for the schoolboy. Remember studying in the second question? Here also it's in the second question. Okay, and next you have it in the 4 marks also. In the second main, you have it again in the second one. Why? Because it's a second poem. And what is the mark confined? It is 4 and here it is 1. So, write briefly the speaker's experience in the school in the schoolboy. So, here you have it. Second poem, even in the question paper, it is chronologically placed. So, you have to, what do you write? Write briefly the speaker's experience in the school. You can say all the plight that the child is facing about. You can say how he distinguishes between the nature and the school or the formal way of education. Next, in my next class, I would suggest you, I'll not warn you, I'll suggest you to have watched my video, Money Madness. Sit with the text that I showed you prior. In my former of the slides, I've showed you the text termed reflections. Go to a nearby shop or the bookstores, buy one. And for my next class, I want you to answer from there. And that's Money Madness by D.H. Lawrence. Be thorough enough to answer. And you should say, ma'am, I can better answer than you. That's what every teacher anticipates. So that's all stored for you for today. I'll meet you yet again with new session. Here's Vidyashram for you, standard retained on learning. Take care.